Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for Z Nation. And what this video is going to be doing is giving my review for the most recent episode, which is We Were Nowhere Near the Grand Canyon. Much better episode than last week's Roswell was. This is another one of those standalone episodes that really, if you want something that, doesn't necessarily flow into next week, you want everything that you can get out of it with interesting characters, good zombie action, good story, good dialogue, good character interaction. And I think this had everything that you wanted to have in it. So I was very impressed. I'm going to give my thoughts on it and tell you guys what happened. If you are not caught up with Z Nation and you do not want to be spoiled, then do not watch the video because otherwise you will be spoiled. Okay. So the episode actually begins with a dream. It begins with Vasquez and Warren fighting off zombies in just a very, action-packed way. They had these big, huge machine guns just blowing zombies away. And then when they ran out of bullets, they were using their machetes and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, they just start to get passionate. Vasquez, reaches around and grabs Warren, and the two, kiss. They end up on that gurney that referenced the time in that one episode. It was episode 6, whenever, Vasquez was wounded and Warren was wounded, and they sutured each other's wounds up. That, was a reference to that. But then whenever Warren looked down again, she saw that Vasquez was a zombie. And then she woke up. And I think a lot of that really is Warren's, internal conflict with herself about whether she really, wants to take another chance on another relationship. Last season in season 1, we saw Warren have feelings for Garnett. She acted on them. The two, had a brief romantic interaction, which was cut short because Garnett was killed in episode 6. So I think that a lot of that really is Warren's fears that, she has feelings for Vasquez, but if she acts on them, then, potentially that might get Vasquez killed, or she worries about getting close to him and then him getting killed, and then this is the second time that would happen to her. So I can understand, a little bit about why she would have this dream. And what we see in this episode is the group traveling west in an RV. They're finally able to get a hold of Citizen Z. I mean, man, it's been, about 5 episodes since we've seen him. And he's just been, doing whatever he's doing. I thought the absence of Citizen Z was actually positive for the show. I felt that it helped give a little bit more time, for the other stories that were going on. And I mean, I think that DJ Qualls and Citizen Z as a character and an actor, are great for the show. But it's kind of like characters like Skeezy and Sketchy. When you only include them in 1 or 2 episodes, Skeezy and Sketchy's, appearances are very entertaining. If they were around all the time, I think they would get annoying. And I think that it's really just that they don't have anything for Citizen Z to do right now other than transmit information to the group and kill these zombies, which is exactly what he was doing. So it was nice to see him, and I'm glad he appeared in this episode because it was pretty entertaining. But he informs the group that that big zombie herd that we heard reference to in season 1, and the group, was able to hide from it back in season 1, but it's back, or it's a completely different herd, but there's a herd basically coming their way. It's miles long, miles deep, and they need to get out of its way. Well, the RV they're driving runs out of gas, and it's just not really fit for, travel anyways. It was a pretty run-down RV. So Murphy and Addie, as well as Warren and Vasquez, travel into the, the city area, and Doc and 10,000, they climb up into the mountains to basically get away from that because they had to travel on these, I think it was all-terrain vehicles, just those little, four-wheelers basically, and they only had room for, 2 on each. So both groups end up running into to Native American tribes that are actually originally from the same tribe, but they're living in different areas. Um, Warren's group runs into the chief named Danny Red Cloud, and the tribe owned and operated a casino while the world was still the way it was, and they were basically just camping out there and surviving. They hear about the zombie herd, but the father is, firm in his belief that this is where they belong, this is where they need to stay, and that he's not leaving and his people aren't leaving. And they basically help Addie to get the radio working in order to call Citizen Z and get the coordinates. So that was a positive on that end. On the other end, with Doc and 10,000, they run into the children of Danny Red Cloud up in the cliffs, which is the native tribal land that this Native American tribe was from. And the son's name is Red Hawk. He's actually played by Eddie Spears, which, if you're familiar with the show Hell on Wheels on AMC, he played Joseph Blackmoon. I always enjoyed his character, and it was really nice to see, again, another prominent actor taking on a role on the show, even a guest role. But you see a lot of these actors like Kelly McGillis. You have William Sadler from the third episode, and George R. R. Martin. You can see that, Z Nation is out there and people know about it, which is really exciting and is good for their future. But basically, Red Hawk is leading his people, and the father and the son kind of had a little falling out. And they stay up in the cliffs because zombies can't really climb, and they're pretty much safe there. Also there is his sister and Red Cloud's daughter. I believe her name was Ayala. And then they have a medicine woman with them named Kuruk, and other Native American tribe members there as well. There's probably about 15 of them, maybe 20. And Doc and 10,000 run into them, but Red Hawk is very hostile towards them. Red Hawk believes that, it's because of individuals like 10,000 and Doc, that ended up causing this. I think he had a little bit of hesitation, not trusting of Caucasian individuals, which, of course, if you're familiar with history, is one of the unfortunate blemishes and tragedies of our country, in our history, what we did to Native American tribes. But that can definitely, link into here why he would feel this way towards, 10,000 and Doc, and not be trusting of them because they're outsiders to him. And he blames them for, I think it was called Zendingo, which basically is this concept of, taking without really getting satisfaction out of it, and just in general just spreading the zombie virus. He believes that it's them that caused it. And Ayala's more of a rational person, who doesn't really necessarily judge the book by by its cover in this case, and helps 10,000 and Doc, treats their wounds because one of the Braves threw and hit Doc in the head with this weapon and cut his head open pretty badly. And they end up getting treated, and Doc actually really gets in touch with his spiritual side. He, is basically very, familiar with taking various different kinds of hallucinogenic drugs, and he takes some of the medicine that the medicine woman offers him, which basically allows him to, channel into these what he sees as statements from spirits. And the wall had these drawings on it, and they really connected very well with him, and he was basically able to channel a lot of spiritual energy from there. So it was very interesting. But he spent a lot of the episode at the beginning part hallucinating. And what ended up happening was Red Hawk goes to send them away, basically saying, "Okay, we treated you. You're fine. Go." But he actually walks them into a trap where they get caught in a net, two different traps, and he leaves them there to basically be the early warning for when the zombies come. That way, they get eaten, they scream, and he knows. Well, zombies start coming their way, and Doc actually has this very interesting out of body experience, which we've seen before in the second episode, White Light, when he was getting strangled by that one bounty hunter, Wes. His body floated, or his spirit, if you will, or soul, floated out of his body and actually, saw the letter opener that he used to kill the bounty hunter. And Doc ends up having another out of body experience where he basically comes out of the net and kills the zombie, and he looks a lot like what you would see maybe in a Native American warrior. He had some Native American clothing on. His beard had like black streaks in it, which would make you think of war paint. So it was very interesting, to say the least, to see that happen. And Ayala eventually ends up coming to their rescue and cuts them down. And they end up going back to the casino to hook back up with Warren's group, and they find out about the zombie herd. And basically, they need to leave. But the father won't go. The father basically says that he's going to stay behind, that this is his, in a sense, this is his spiritual grounds. He built the casino up from, nothing. He's run it his entire life, and that's where his spirit needs to be, according to him. So he stays behind, and just the zombie herd, which in general is so large that it's basically just this big, huge cloud of dust that's moving across the desert, just totally flattens the entire casino and presumably kills the father, Danny Red Cloud. While this is all going on, of course, Citizen Z is trying to kill off the remaining zombies at Northern Lights, and he runs out of bullets and he has to use this, I think it was an anti-tank missile, which is, again, a pretty hilarious scene of him trying to figure out how to get it to work, and then he ends up shooting the rocket right through the zombie's midsection, and it basically just starts a fire that basically incinerates it. So that's pretty much what he did with the episode. But again, I thought it was nice to finally see him again, and I think it was one of those times where it was entertaining to have him in the episode, rather than more like a nuisance in a sense. Not that I would necessarily label Citizen Z as that. I do think his character is great. I think he's very important, but given the limited type of role and the type, that he serves on the show, you got to do one of two things. You either have to limit it, or you need to get him out of Northern Lights and into the array. Get him with the rest of the group. Have him leave Northern Lights. Maybe then his character could become more interesting. Well, after all this happens, the group goes to the cliffs, and they find, Red Hawk there. Ayala informs Red Hawk that their father has died, and he basically makes peace with the rest of the group. He apologizes for his actions, and, they let bygones be bygones, and they unite. Well, of course, the zombie herd is still coming, and they're actually coming to the extent that they could end up, coming down over the cliff on top of them. So they need to, take care of this. Well, what they decide to do is, Doc has this, he sees this picture of buffalo, which, I think it was maybe a story about Native Americans who would, hunt the buffalo and how they would do it. And Doc basically says, well, hey, maybe we can lure the zombies into a trap. And what they actually end up doing is they go near the cliff, they set this large fire across the desert in a line that would basically get the zombies to go in a different direction. While this is happening, Murphy is, screaming and yelling and begging everybody not to, let the zombies die, not to kill them, just to let them go. And he tries to, he yells at them, turn around, go back, go back. And of course they, there's so many of them. He can control zombies, but not, a herd of 10,000 or more. I mean, there were a lot of zombies in that group. And what ends up happening is the distraction ends up sending them right over the Grand Canyon. I'm talking like maybe thousands of zombies killed just in this episode. I mean, this has to be some kind of a record, but all those zombies just basically go tumbling over the cliffs. It's a very, very interesting, intense scene. I mean, that was actually wasn't half bad for, the budget for the show. I mean, they really actually made it look pretty darn good and realistic. But they basically send all the zombies over the cliff. And where the episode title comes from is when they leave, they basically ask that they not tell anybody, that we were nowhere near the Grand Canyon. It's this little, running joke that we were nowhere near this, landmark. We were nowhere near this place, so we didn't do these terrible things, here, which they did. I mean, in a sense, I'm assuming that if you would look at the Grand Canyon now, you just see, bodies of zombies, which would take away, it takes away the beauty of the landscape that you would usually see. So I can understand, where that title comes from and why they would say that. But the end of the episode is very, very good, and really sets up a lot of things that we may see later on in the show. And I'll elaborate more on it in a separate video, because I think this finally gives me a topic that I can talk about a little more in depth. But Murphy is just very upset that all those zombies died. He really just does not want to kill zombies if he doesn't, have to. And, you can tell, he has a connection to the zombies. That's just based on the fact that he's, becoming more and more like a zombie. Yeah, he has the cure in him, but he really, looks like a zombie. I mean, he ate brains in the Collector episode and potentially liked it. So he has that quality, and he can communicate with them, talk with them, through that telekinesis thing. And he's very upset that all these zombies died, and Warren basically goes on the bus that they're going to drive away and basically gives him a lecture, saying, look, Murphy, the day is going to come where you're going to have to decide whether, you're going to side with the humans or you're going to side with the zombies. What side are you going to take? And she tells him to remember, who was trying to save them, or who was trying to save him, which would be Warren's group, and who's constantly trying to kill them, and that's the zombies. So I think it definitely sets up a very interesting conflict that we may explore with Murphy, and may have an impact on the show later on in the season. Maybe even near the season finale, this might be some kind of a cliffhanger that they might have, with Murphy siding with the zombies. That could happen, and potentially becoming the terror and the villain that maybe some of us think he might become. So I think it was a very good episode. I really enjoyed all of the elements to it, and I can't wait for next week. I think they're really back on track. They've recovered from that Roswell catastrophe, and I'm looking forward to next week. So with that, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I want to thank all of you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, don't be afraid to leave them. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you everyone for watching.